release his medical records. I've done it. Every other presidential candidate in modern era has done it. He is unwilling to do a 60 Minutes interview. Like every other major party candidate has done for more than half a century. He is unwilling to meet for a second debate. Here's the thing. It makes you wonder, why does his staff want him to hide away? One must question, are they afraid that people will see that he is too weak and unstable to lead America?
What's up, everybody? Major Retired Richard Ojeda here, and let's talk about something truly groundbreaking. Vice President Kamala Harris did what every presidential candidate has done for years. She released her medical records. Imagine that. Complete transparency, showing the American people that she's got nothing to hide. And it took her, what, a day, a single day, to do what Donald Trump's been dodging for years. And that's got him absolutely squirming.
Trump's campaign says they aren't bothered by questions about his mental acuity and cognitive health, but the state of his campaign would suggest otherwise. His events tend to be held in safe spaces because his diehard supporters don't care what he says or does. But those who aren't in the tank for him have serious questions, which explains why he's declined a second debate, an interview with 60 Minutes, and an interview with CNBC, which he abruptly canceled this morning.
Now, you'd think this wouldn't be controversial, right? I mean, transparency is the bare minimum here. Every candidate in modern history has shared their medical records. Biden did it, President Obama did it, even Ronald Reagan did it. But Trump, no way. He's above it all. He's out here treating basic transparency like it's optional. And the question is, why?
And it's so simple. I mean, this isn't like Elon with his rocket ships that land within 12 inches on the moon where they wanted to land. Or he gets the engines back. That was the first I realized. I said, who the hell did that? I saw engines about 3-4 years ago. These things were coming, cylinders, no wings, no nothing. And they're coming down very slowly, landing on a raft in the middle of the ocean someplace with a circle. Boom. Reminded me of the Biden circles that he used to have, right? He'd have 8 circles and he couldn't fill them up. But then I heard he beat us with the popular vote. I don't know. Couldn't fill up the 8 circles. I always loved those circles. They were so beautiful.
Here's the deal. Donald Trump is the oldest candidate in U.S. history. Yep, the oldest. The guy who they propped up as an ultimate macho man at the RNC, the strong leader, immune to weakness. He's now out here hiding his health from the American people. This is the same crowd that made an entire narrative around Biden's so-called cognitive decline. Oh, they had a field day with that one, didn't they? They made the entire RNC message about the supposed perils of elderly leaders. And now that the shoe's on the other foot, and suddenly, what do we get? Silence.
Vice President Harris looking to flip the script against former President Trump, putting his age and health front and center as Democrats ramp up a push to cast doubt on Mr. Trump's mental fitness.
He's confused. He's a nearly 80-year-old man.
They're pointing to stumbles like this one.
If everybody gets out and votes on January 5th or before.
The election on November 5th, and highlighting his digressions.
Did you ever hear of Hannibal Lecter?
And run-ons, like one described by a former Republican congressman as a heaping pile of hot mess.
He was asking her all these, they don't take like I do. Anybody who wants to go, what the hell difference does it make? They have, and how dishonest was ABC?
And here comes Speaker Mike Johnson, rushing to Trump's defense, saying Trump's medical records are, quote, irrelevant to voters.
Should Donald Trump release all of his medical records, Mr.
He has.
Speaker? he issued the records of his physicians. Kamala Harris issued her medical records as diversion because she's desperate because she's sinking in the polls. Donald Trump's health is on display. Everyone in America can see it. The medical records are irrelevant. Let's talk about things that the American people care about.
Irrelevant? I mean, where does Johnson live? Planet selective memory? Planet head in the sand? It's funny. When it was Biden, Johnson and his pals were practically demanding a cognitive test every week. But when it's their guy, suddenly medical transparency is out the window. It's irrelevant. We don't need to know about the health of the guy vying for the White House. Nothing to see here, folks. Just continue moving along. Let's be clear. This isn't just some minor detail. It's just not formality. It's called transparency. When you're the oldest candidate in U.S. history, maybe, just maybe, the American people deserve to know if you're physically and mentally fit for the job. And yet, Trump acts like sharing his medical records would be a breach of national security. And you know what basically Donald Trump's response was? He didn't answer Kamala's question. No, that would be too simple. Instead, he goes on offense, suggesting Kamala should take a cognitive test.
Donald Trump is calling on Kamala Harris to take a cognitive test. It comes amid accusations from both candidates that the other is unfit for office.
Vice President Harris is 59 when Trump is 78. That's nearly a 20-year span. And, while this was almost a moot issue when it was Biden and Trump, now that it's Harris, that was a campaign issue that was very, very much a talking point for former President Trump on the campaign trail, criticizing President Biden. Now he's finding himself as the older one on the ticket, and I think that's bringing up some insecurities, and that's what's making this even more of a bigger issue in upcoming campaigns.
That's right, folks. The man who refuses to release even the most basic details about his health is out here demanding cognitive tests for other people, and that's Rich. The man has trouble stringing together a sentence half the time. He's out there on stage slurring his words, going off on tangents, getting names wrong. He's looking like he's in desperate need of a nap every time he gets up to speak. But somehow he thinks he's in the position to judge someone else's mental fitness. It's laughable. It's like the pot calling the kettle orange. And then there's Mike Johnson, backing him up, trying to spin this whole thing as if it's some kind of distraction. Oh, Kamala only released her records as a diversion because she's desperate in the polls? Really, Mike? That's the angle you're going with? So when Biden released his records, it was because he was desperate? When Obama did it, was it a diversion? Johnson's grasping at straws here, bending over backwards to defend a guy who won't even do the bare minimum. And let's not ignore the sheer irony here. Trump, the self-proclaimed model of health, has had one bizarre medical saga after another. Remember his former doctor, the one who said he'd be the healthiest president ever? Turns out that doctor was also Trump's golfing buddy. Real credible, right? And the medical reports Trump has released? A few vague letters that sound more like PR pieces than actual medical assessments? We're supposed to just take his word for it. That's that he's in excellent health. Meanwhile, this is the guy who struggles to stand steady at his rallies, who couldn't even walk down a ramp without looking like he was about to topple over. But sure, he's the picture of fitness, and we're not supposed to question any of this. But here's the thing. The American people are questioning it. They're wondering why the oldest candidate in history won't be upfront about his health. They're wondering why the man who constantly mocks Biden's age and calls for Kamala to take tests won't turn the mirror on himself. What is he hiding? What's he afraid of? Because if he's hiding this much now, what else would he keep from us if he got back into the White House? And that brings us to Project 2025. Trump and his enablers have the vision for America, a vision where they strip away protections, gut education, exploit resources, all in the name of freedom. But freedom for who? Because it sure isn't for the average American. It's freedom for the billionaires, the corporations, the same people lining their pockets. And they think if we wrap it all up in a patriotic bow, we won't notice. They're counting on us being distracted, tired, worn out. They're hoping we'll just look the other way. But we see it. We see the hypocrisy. We see the double standards. They can criticize everyone else for their health, their transparency, their honesty, but when it comes to Trump, it's one big cover-up. His enablers, people like Mike Johnson, J.D. Vance, they're all complicit. They're doing everything they can to protect him, to keep the truth from the American people. So let's make one thing clear. Kamala Harris showed her cards. She put it all on the table. And what does Donald Trump do? He dodges. He deflects. He hides behind his loyalists who say anything to keep his secrets buried. This is not leadership. This is not strength. This is a game of smoke and mirrors. And we're done with it. The American people deserve better. They deserve leaders who don't run from transparency, leaders who don't hide behind their enablers, leaders who understand that honesty and integrity are not optional in a democracy. If Trump thinks he can dodge his way through this, he's got another thing coming. Because at the end of the day, this isn't about health records. It's about trust. It's about accountability. It's about whether we're willing to let one man's ego and his enablers dictate the future of our country. And if they're too scared to answer these basic questions, then maybe it's time they step aside. America deserves leaders who are up for the job, physically, mentally, and ethically. And that is an absolute fact. Sappers clear the way, airborne all the way.